Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Author by Heavenly Overlord. Translator by NYOIBO Studio. Audio novels by Novelist. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 181. Ice Phoenix's Divine Wings. That voice was unusually familiar. He turned his head rigidly and an unbelievable scene was reflected in his pupils. Su Yu carried Yao Hong's graceful and charming body in his arms and he stood 30 feet behind Long Fan's back quietly. The person who saved Yao Hong was actually Su Yu. At Su Yu's back, there was a pair of magnificent giant wings that looked like an illusion, and it was shown to the people beautifully. The pair of wings was so huge to the point that it was exaggerating. When the wings opened up, it was about 50 feet broad. It blotted out the sky and the sun, enveloping the arena with its shadow. Its shocking appearance had caused everyone to be astonished. The wings looked lifelike, with its veins, arteries, and feathers clearly visible. Every wing was formed by the concentration of the scarlet raging flame. When looked at it, the whole pair of wings was burning. When looked at it from afar, it looked as if a huge fire phoenix had descended from the sky. The shocking scene of a 50 feet broad giant flame wings had shaken the hearts of everyone. Phoenix. Within the audience, many disciples' throats were as if it had been blocked by something. Their hearts shivered violently and they found it difficult to say anything. What a big pair of wings. Is that really the phoenix's wings? It's so beautiful. After being shocked, many female disciples looked at Su Yu with admiration and respect. Mo Wu's beautiful eyes shrank completely and she was extremely surprised. The second elder's eyes were filled with astonishment. With the sudden appearance of a pair of phoenix wings that blotted out the sky and the sun, even if it were she was also stunned and attracted by the wings' beauty for a short while. After some time, she revealed a smiling expression. We have all underestimated him. A Stage 2 top-class legacy-level cultivation technique. Stage 2 top-class. At that moment when Mo Wu became absent-minded, her heart started to shiver. The whole arena was silent. As they stared at the giant phoenix wings which blotted out the sun and the moon on the arena, the violent waves in their hearts did not seem to stop. When they fixed their eyes on the owner of the phoenix wings, Su Yu, all of them regarded him with veneration. When his fluttering silver hair, the strange seal in between his eyebrows and his extremely handsome face were combined with the extremely beautiful phoenix wings, he gave others the illusion that he was a god. That was the second form of the icy divine wings, Ice Phoenix's divine wings. After being shaken up hastily by the incredible raging ice flame's cold energy, icy divine wings made a breakthrough at an explosive speed, where it made a breakthrough from Stage 1 top class to Stage 2 top class. This breakthrough was so fast that it was unprecedented. Su Yu put down Yao Hong whom he carried in his arms with a calm expression and said with a warm voice, Senior Yao, how are your injuries? Yao Hong opened her beautiful eyes so big that it was like a circle and she raised her eyes in disbelief to look at the giant fire wings which blotted out the sky and the sun. When her gaze landed on Su Yu's face, she felt shocked for the first time. For Su Yu to rescue her in that kind of imminent peril, it could be seen that Su Yu's movement technique was so frightening that it was unimaginable. It seemed that the reason why Long Fan managed to catch up with him 3 times was that he was suppressing his movement technique intentionally. He had finally displayed the true abilities of his frightening movement technique. I am fine. Yao Hong came to her senses from her astonishment, but there were still remnants of astonishment in her eyes. She who was valiant and heroic had lost control of herself unavoidably and she walked down the arena wobbly. Su Yu nodded his head, looked at Long Fan calmly and flapped his 50 feet broad and towering wings lightly. Do you want me to display my moves, or do you want to concede defeat? Su Yu questioned Long Fan calmly without any threat of violence. However, no one felt that Su Yu was arrogant. It was as if it was normal for those words to come out from his mouth. Long Fan could not believe the scene in front of his eyes. That was the real abilities of Su Yu's movement technique. Previously, Su Yu had suppressed his abilities. However, when he heard Su Yu's words that were filled with disdain, even though he felt surprised, he also felt anger. You think so highly of yourself? Long Fan hummed coldly. It is not so easy to shatter the myth of the undefeated Holy King. Yellow Dragon's green cloud movement. Long Fan gave an angry roar. The yellow clouds around his body vibrated quickly and changed into a yellow dragon which passed through the clouds back and forth and headed for Su Yu. With a speed that was comparable to someone of Dragon Realm Level 1, the audience could only catch a glimpse of its shadow and they were unable to see its shape. Yao Hong's beautiful eyes shrank slightly and she observed the match seriously. However, she was unable to determine Long Fan's path of movement. The audience was looking forward to the outcome of the match. Su Yu's Ice Phoenix's divine wings and Long Fan's yellow dragon's green cloud movement, which one of them was stronger? However, a delicate voice drifted across the arena. Too slow. Rumble. Bang. As the voice drifted, a dull noise could be heard from the arena. When they fixed their eyes onto the noise, a scene that caused them to gasp appeared. Long Fan, who was about to attack, moved with a speed so fast that it was difficult to follow his path of movement. However, at the very moment, it was as if he had banged into a mountain and he was sent flying backward from within his blurry path of movement. OWH. Long Fan spat out a mouthful of blood and he was filled with astonishment. He did not manage to see clearly who attacked him and in the next moment, he was kicked in the abdomen. However, without any time to react, he had punched his face again. Thump. His body, which had not fallen, flew again. At the next moment, another kick landed on him. Rumble. Bang. After which, a punch landed. Thump. The arena was dead silent. In their eyes, Long Fan was as if he was a sandbag that was sent flying in all directions in the sky. Long Fan did not have the strength to return the attack. More accurately, he did not even know who attacked him. In the audience's eyes, they could only briefly see a red thunderbolt shining continuously. Every time the red thunderbolt shone, it would be the very moment where Long Fan was attacked and spit out blood afterward. After 10 moves, Long Fan's body was full of blood and he was heavily injured. Rustle. The extremely beautiful Ice Phoenix's divine wings appeared. Is that your definition of the myth of being undefeatable? Su Yu's silver hair floated at his forehead. A pair of pitch black eyeballs was extremely calm. Seems like it is nothing much. After hearing what was said, Long Fan was not ashamed. Instead, his expression was filled with fear. In front of Su Yu, he actually did not have the strength to fight back. The movement technique that he was so proud of was useless against Su Yu. If that were a real fight, he would have died many times. Without question, Su Yu had abilities that were more frightening than someone of the Dragon Realm. As to which level of Dragon Realm Su Yu was at, no one knew. The audience in the arena was extremely shocked. In Su Yu's hands, Long Fan, the half-dragon as well as the number one of the 3 unmatched Holy Kings who was undefeatable, actually had no strength to resist him. What kind of abilities did Su Yu have? Had he achieved the Dragon Realm? Mo Wu took a normal breath and her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. A few months ago, in her mind, Su Yu was merely a low-leveled Holy King. At the very moment, he had abilities comparable to someone of the Dragon Realm. His abilities had grown so quickly that he could be considered unique. The second elder's white eyes were filled with admiration and fondness. Half a year ago, that ignorant little kid who questioned her about the situation in the depository of Buddhist scriptures had grown to such a high level half a year later. Shiruolan, who was atop the arena, gasped. Su Yu defeated Long Fan, the undefeated Holy King, so easily. Shiruolan's mind recalled something. Her lips wriggled as though she wanted to say something. However, after pondering for some time, she kept her mouth shut in the end. Her eyes gradually returned back to being cold. Do you still want to fight with the 2 remaining persons of the 3 unmatched Holy Kings? Su Yu's eyes swept towards Yao Hong and then landed on Rong Hanming afterward. Senior Rong, you seemed like you wanted to fight me just now. Rong Hanming's forehead was streaming with cold sweat and his back was wet with sweat. He could not help but laugh awkwardly. Junior Su, you have misunderstood me. I concede defeat. Recalling that he had intentions to fight Su Yu previously, the bottom of Rong Hanming's feet started to emit cold air. Su Yu nodded his chin indifferently. I understand. As such, Su Yu was worthy of being the number one of the second segment. He dueled with the 6 persons who had been eliminated and selected the strongest person out of them to fill up the 5th slot. The second round of selection is over. Rest for a short while and prepare for the ranking competition in the 3rd segment, Xuanhuan declared indifferently and returned back to the side of the 10th elder. The 10th elder's expression was a bit gloomy. Su Yu's brilliant match had caused everyone to be astonished. In the whole of Liaxian faction's history, there was only one person who could compete with Su Yu's legendary method of training. That person was the 2nd elder. There was a possibility that Su Yu might break her epic record of achieving Dragon Realm level 7 at the age of 20. After all, Su Yu was only 15 years old at the very moment. Li Guang, even though you are dead, you have left behind a snake in the grass. The 10th elder whispered softly, and his words contained a bit of hatred. Xuanhuan stood at one side quietly and her face was filled with fear. Previously, Su Yu knelt down in front of Li Guang and made an oath which echoed in the sky that he would kill her and Han Ji with his own hands. At the very moment, that oath reverberated in her heart. That time, she treated Su Yu's oath as an ignorant, fearless and valueless oath that was made by Su Yu, who was in dire straits, and she ignored it. However, at the very moment, she realized that that oath was about to become real. Su Yu already had the abilities to kill her. Thinking about that, she whispered with remorse, if I had known that this would happen, I would have rushed into the Li family at all costs to eradicate the source of the trouble. Feeling Xuanhuan's fear, Han Ji extended his hand, grabbed her soft, white, and delicate hands and laughed coldly. Don't worry. If he wants to kill you, he will have to go through me first. He is just a mere Dragon Realm level 1 and killing him is as easy as turning my hand over. Xuanhuan laughed gently and her face became at ease. She took advantage of the situation to lean onto Han Ji's chest and she said gently, thank you, Brother Ji. Feeling that his chest was warm, Han Ji greedily breathed in the fragrance from Xuanhuan's body. His eyes were filled with infatuation and pride. Ruolan, the thing that I take pride the most in is obtaining you. Xuanhuan was born with a unique fragrance, which is what Han Ji loved the most about her. Because of that, Han Ji used every means to obtain her in the past. Xuanhuan smiled and got closer to his chest so that he could breathe in more of her fragrance more conveniently. Having seen that scene, the elders and disciples remained calm. The both of them stuck to each other like glue. They had loved one another for 100 years and were a story on everyone's lips within the faction. Su Yu shot a cold glance towards the both of them and his murderous intent became thicker. Li Guang's life was completely destroyed by Xuanhuan. If she did not die, Su Yu's anger would not subside. A delicate fragrance floated over and a dignified and beautiful shadow arrived at Su Yu's side. Master told me to tell you that in the duel of the 3rd segment, you need not be too concerned about the results. Mo Wu's expression remained cold. However, when she looked at Su Yu's gaze, her expression became slightly different as Su Yu had taught her something in the past. Su Yu pondered for some time and he immediately understood the 2nd elder's intentions. He nodded his head. Yes. I know. I have secured one of the slots to enter the ancient Xuanhuan temple. For the 3rd segment's ranking competition, it is only for the sake of glory. Hence, I will not expect too much of myself so that I will not reveal my true abilities. Among the ancient Xuanhuan temple, the competition was high and it was unwise to reveal one's true abilities early to earn the desired position in the ranking competition. Mo Wu's beautiful eyes glared at Su Yu with suspicion. She did not know why, but Su Yu always gave her a feeling that he was more mature than someone of the same age as him. Even though Su Yu was younger than her by 3 years old, there were some fields that he was wiser and more composed than she was. Hence, this caused Mo Wu to feel unsatisfied. That is indeed one of the reasons. Over the years, There are very few people who will display their true abilities in the third segment of the Xuanhuan contest. However, there is one more important reason, the main point that Master wants to remind you about. Mo Wu's beautiful eyes were burning with a fighting spirit that was rarely seen. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 182, 100 Territories Alliance. It's about the 100 Territories Alliance meet. It is going to happen just as the ancient Xuanhuan temple leaves. Before entering the meet, it would be detrimental to you if you display too much of your abilities. Su Yu arched his eyebrows, his eyes lost. What is the 100 Territories Alliance? And what is this meeting about? The 100 Territories Alliance is the 100 Territories Alliance. Mo Wai had just realized that Su Yu had only entered the faction half a year ago. The 100 Territories Alliance is the alliance formed between several hundred powerhouses of the continent. The Lixian faction is one of them. Su Yu was shocked. Other than the Lixian faction, the Zhenlong continent still has several hundred other powerhouses. The Zhenlong continent is indeed massive. Even though he had thought about the fact that the Lixian faction was not the only powerhouse in the Zhenlong continent, he did not think that there were so many powerhouses, the numbers reaching several hundred. Mo Wu froze for a moment, before doubling over in laughter. As cold as she was, she had never shown her smile in front of another person. Even the second elder had not seen much of her smile. But she could not control her laughter. Her petal-like red lips parted, showing off 2 rows of snow-white teeth. Her eyes took the shape of her laugh, forming a pair of crescent moons. Her 2 dimples hung on the side of her cheeks. She looked like the cherry blossoms in March, causing many to be drunk on her beauty. Su Yu was also shocked. It was also the first time he had seen Mo Wu laugh. Mo Wu seemed to realize her unusual actions, covering her lips with her jade-like hands. Her face was slightly flushed, laced with some feelings of shyness. Those later turned into frustration as she stared at Su Yu. What are you looking at? Her smile had been kept and she regained her composed look. Do not say anything about this in front of outsiders, or they will surely laugh. Looking at Su Yu's confused eyes, Mo Wu calmly explained, the vastness of the Zhenlong continent is out of your imagination. The Lixian faction is merely a tiny fraction in the Zhenlong continent. There's not enough time to explain everything to you. Don't you have a chance to enter the depository that you haven't used? Within the depository is a book called The Summary of the Zhenlong Continent. It explains the Zhenlong continent in great detail, and would be beneficial in improving your knowledge of the Zhenlong continent. Su Yu had once gone on a mission to the Wolong snowfields and had received the reward of entering the depository. But he did not have any techniques that he needed to learn as of now, and thus had always kept that right. Mo Wu's words had piqued Su Yu's curiosity. Just where did the Zhenlong continent really count in the world? All right, just remember it. There's no need to fight for a good rank. After Mo Wu said this, she left as if she was escaping from something. The disciples who saw the scene were still dumbfounded. None of them had ever seen Mo Wu smile. Mo Wu was a cold person, rejecting people from 1,000 miles away no matter who they were. Only Su Yu could cause her to be relaxed and let out the accidental laugh. That laugh was beautiful and grabbed the attention of everyone, making it hard for anyone to forget. Many of the male disciples were drunk on that beauty. Of course, there are some with nasty expressions, such as Wei Kang. His sinister eyes glared at Su Yu, marking him as an enemy. The feelings of Mo Wu when she protected Su Yu in the abyss of Wutong was clear as day. And today, Su Yu had made her laugh. Undoubtedly, Su Yu occupied an extraordinary position in Mo Wu's heart. Su Yu, do you dare touch the woman I have claimed? I'll teach you a lesson. Shi Ruolan walked to the contest stage. The Xuanhuan ranking competition starts now. You can choose who you want to challenge by yourselves. Each of you would have one chance to challenge someone. The victor continues to the next round of sparring until we find the last one standing. Her voice was gentle but filled the entirety of the faction. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Dragon Realm disciples who were late were gradually arriving, gathering at the preparation area. The faction had 15 Dragon Realm disciples, but only 12 had arrived today. There were 3 disciples that had not arrived. Of the 4 great disciples of the Liaxian faction, only Mo Wu had come. Ranked 1st Ji Hongshu, ranked 2nd Shen Zhouyu and ranked 3rd Cao Xuan had not arrived. It was not the first time Su Yu had heard the names of the 4 great disciples of the Liaxian faction. Su Yu was extremely familiar with Mo Wu and Cao Xuan, but he had never seen the high and mighty disciples ranked 1st and 2nd. According to the rumors, they were all madmen when it came to cultivation, locking themselves in throughout the year with little regard to what was happening in the outside world, and thus was hard to catch a glimpse of. Would they come for the trials of the ancient Xuanhuan temple? Whoosh! 2 air-breaking sounds could be heard. Cao Xuan, who had been injured by Su Yu, had his injuries recovered. He was floating in the air, giving off a noble aura. But what was strange that him, being proud and arrogant, was adopting a conservative stance, following at the back of a black-haired man. The black-haired man was skinny, his frame lanky. He was so skinny that many thought that he would be toppled with just a gust of wind. But as skinny as he was, he gave Su Yu a deep feeling of threat. It was as if he was facing a ferocious tiger back when he was still mortal. Rumble. The black-haired man descended onto the preparation area, causing the earth to tremble slightly. Deep in his eyes, his pupils moved slightly, scanning the powerful Dragon Realm disciples around him, as if searching for someone. He did not come. The voice of the black-haired man was raspy to the point where it was almost sinister. After saying this, he walked to a corner of the preparation area and closed his eyes to rest. Wherever he passed, Dragon Realm disciples were overcome with fear and respect, naturally opening up a path for him. Is that the legendary first disciple of the Great Elder, Shen Zhouan? Yao Hong's eyes were filled with fear and respect. Shen Zhouan, a legendary powerhouse of the faction. Yao Hong had only seen him twice despite being in the faction for 10 years. It is indeed him. It is rumored that his cultivation level had been raised to Dragon Realm level 2 upper tier. In 3 years, he would reach the abilities of an elder. At the side, Song Hanming swallowed, full of fear. Dragon Realm level 3 was the criteria for being promoted to an elder in the faction. Shen Zhouan was only 20 years of age, but had achieved such a cultivation level, rivaling the 2nd elder back in those days. Such an ungodly potential caused many to exclaim as they saw him. The first disciple of the Great Elder. Su Yu's expression was serious. His instincts told him that he was a formidable figure. Whoosh! An air-breaking sound pierced through the sky. A figure in plain robes had approached him with blinding speed. He was clearly still on the horizon just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye had arrived at the preparation area. Shen Zhouan opened his eyes, a fierce battle intent burning. His raspy laughed as if came from a ghost. Ji Hongshu. Thud. Ji Hongshu's descent had caused the earth to tremble, multiple cracks forming from his legs, spreading around him. The rumored only personal disciple of the master of the faction, Ji Hongshu. Song Hanming took in a light breath, his eyes filled with admiration and respect. Ji Hongshu was 24, wearing a plain robe. His features were defined and filled with masculinity. He did not move, but the impact he had on others was as if a wave of steel had crashed onto them. Su Yu observed him, his eyelids twitching. What a terrifying body. Su Yu had observed him closely, discovering what the others could not. The air surrounding Ji Hongshu's body was boiling. It was caused by his body being too powerful, involuntarily dispersing blood energy around him. The thoughtless action could cause the air around him to boil. If he used his full power. This impacted Su Yu greatly. This was Ji Hongshu, the top disciple of the faction. Ji Hongshu and Shen Zhouan. These 2 elusive geniuses had descended here today in a shocking fashion. Ji Hongshu's fierce gaze glanced toward Shen Zhouan. He kept his gaze there for a second, a bolt of disappointment flashing in his eyes. He gently shook his head. You cannot defeat me. Shen Zhouan was not angry, instead, his battle intent became greater. We shall see in our battle later. We have not fought in a year, I wonder what levels had you broken through to? Alright, other than you, there's no other opponent left in the faction. Ji Hongshu let out a light sigh. His words carried a little loneliness, the loneliness of being the strongest. His fierce gaze leaped past Xuanhuan, scanning the rest of the disciples. But those scanned by him averted their gaze, not daring to look directly at him. Ji Hongshu, the legendary powerhouse. His name was recognized all over the faction. But the disappointment in Ji Hongshu's eyes did not go away. As he scanned past the familiar faces, Ji Hongshu sighed as he shook his head. In a year, there are no new Dragon Realm disciples. Your abilities did not improve much at all. There's still only Xuanhuan that could stand up to me. Including Mo Wu, the 13 Dragon Realm disciples all had expressions of shame and bitterness. Only Ji Hongshu could look at him like he was the monarch. In a year, their abilities had improved. But in Ji Hongshu's eyes, those improvements were not worth mentioning. It was the same as not improving at all. But Ji Hongshu's trailing gaze fell onto someone. He shot his fierce gaze over, locking onto an unfamiliar Holy King disciple. His unique silver hair was strange and memorable. His strange aura stood out from the crowd. He squinted slightly. Ji Hongshu gradually said, "Interesting, even though I don't know how you did it, my instincts tell me that you are very dangerous." These words caused ripples all around. A crowd of Dragon Realm disciples had been disregarded by Ji Hongshu. But Ji Hongzhu had said the words, "very dangerous," when he saw Su Yu. Swoop, swoop, swoop. 1,000 eyes from the crowd all shot towards Su Yu. Shock, curiosity, lost, injustice, many expressions were worn on the faces of the crowd. It was at this moment that Cao Xuan noticed that Su Yu had fought into the top 20 of the faction. How is that possible? How did he manage to get into the top 20 with his abilities? Cao Xuan lost his voice in shock, his heart filled with uncertainty. When they last fought, Su Yu could not even rank in the top 100, much less the top 20. Xuanhuan squinted his eyes, his raspy voice giving off an icy intent. He is the Su Yu you talk about. Interesting. Ji Hongshu's judgment is exceptional. He was speaking empty words when he said Su Yu was dangerous. I look forward to battling him. Cao Xuan's fist was clenched tightly, his expression sinister. Xuanhuan had not even looked forward to fighting Cao Xuan, but now was looking forward to a battle against Su Yu. When did the ant that had to look up to him at the Xuanhuan Island grow to such an extent? Fury and fear from deep within his soul welled up in his heart. He could not give Su Yu any more room to grow. A killing intent circled in his eyes. Wei Kang's expression was rigid, his heart filled with injustice, especially when he glanced at the cold Mo Wu who had shown looks of surprise. Su Yu, I do not believe that you are this powerful. The gazes that were shot toward him caused Su Yu to laugh bitterly. He felt especially bitter when he felt the multiple looks of animosity and battle intent. He had wished to lay low for the first 3 rounds, but things were not going his way. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 183, Striving for a Decisive Victory. Su Yu did not fear a single match. Shi Murong's pupils shrank slightly and he became serious. Ji Hongshu, who was so strong, actually judged Su Yu as well. Shi Murong's heart felt restless like never before. He cast aside his shocked look and he forced himself to remain composed. Rules of the ranking competition are as follows: as there is a shortage of time, everyone will be given one chance to make his move. Based on the multiple times a display of abilities through the duels, the faction master and the 10 elders will give you an appropriate ranking. After listening to the rules, many people felt that it was unfair. Without a match where one went all out, how was it possible for them to ascertain the rankings of the participants accurately? However, thinking about it carefully, what kind of diabolic eyesight did the faction master and the 10 supreme elders have? During the match, it would be difficult for superiority and inferiority to escape their insight. In addition, the faction master and the 10 elders would exchange their views at the same time. Hence, the chance of there being an error would be extremely slim. First match: Cao Xuan versus Mo Wu. At once, the audience became excited. The first match was a match between the four great core disciples of the factions number 3, Xuanhuan, and number 4, Mo Wu. Xuanhuan has a higher chance of winning. After all, he has a cultivation base of Dragon Realm level 2 lower tier, which is 1 tier higher than that of Mo Wu. Indeed, when the two of them fought with one another previously, Mo Wu was defeated after 100 moves. After 1 year, the cultivation bases of both of them did not grow and their abilities should not be too far apart from one another. Whiz. Rustle. Two noises broke the silence. Two shadows appeared out of the void on the empty arena. One of them was a young man in his 20s. He had a normal face and he wore a green coat with white clothes. His eyes were bright and he was glowing with health and radiating vigor. The other person was an 18-year-old young lady with a remarkable youthfulness. She was extremely dignified and her temperament was cold, elegant and threatening. Xuanhuan smiled delicately. Junior Mo is even more graceful compared to the past. In this duel, I will go easy on you. Against the most beautiful woman in Liaxian faction, anyone would have a heart that showed pity and tender love. No need. Please give your best. Mo Wu's expression turned cold. Since her opponent's words were filled with mockery, Mo Wu treated him heartlessly. Xuanhuan knew that that was Mo Wu's natural reaction and he did not become angry. If this is the case, then I shall not hold back. 6 fingers of destruction. Grow. Grow. Raging flames emerged from the 6 fingers. The flames looked gentle and did not have any powers. However, in the arena that was filled with 10,000 people, it was evident that the flames were scorching hot. What a frightening temperature! 6 indistinct flames alone already have such power. Within a short distance of the flames, everything would be burnt. Countless disciples swallowed firmly. As expected of Dragon Realm, every move and action has the intention to destroy. The second elder frowned. A stage 2 upper class legacy level cultivation technique. In the past, when he suppressed his cultivation base and fought with Su Yu, his legacy level cultivation technique was only at stage 1 top class. After a few months, he had managed to comprehend his legacy level cultivation technique to stage 2 upper class. His speed of improvement was so fast that it was shocking. The 10th elder smiled gratifyingly and indifferently. Human beings will strengthen themselves when faced with miseries. Xuanhuan started to work hard after he was shamed. After he lost to Su Yu, he worked extremely hard and shut himself off from the outside world for a few months. After which, he made a lot of progress on the comprehension of his cultivation technique. In another sense, he should thank Su Yu. Xuanhuan's greatest shortcoming was his level of comprehension. Although his cultivation base was high, his level of comprehension was the lowest among the 4 great disciples. Hence, his cultivation techniques training fell behind the other 3 of them. He had managed to make up for the gaps caused by his shortcoming. Hence, all the more Mo Wu could not match him. Is that so? The second elder replied indifferently. Atop the arena, Mo Wu's prideful and charming body stood tall and upright calmly. Against the frightening temperature, her heartless eyes remained unchanged. Rustle. She extended 2 of her fingers from her jade-like hands and treated them like a sword. Cold Gale Sword. In an instant, Mo Wu herself was like a cold sword. Her temperament was cold as though it could force someone into submission. Her 2 fingers emitted an abundant amount of sword energy that was swift and fierce like an overlord. Rustle. Both of them disappeared high up into the sky at the same time and their attacks collided outrageously with a speed faster than sound. One of the attacks was 6 fingers shrouded in a frightening temperature and the other attack was 2 fingers with an overwhelming amount of sword energy. Their attacks collided soundlessly and it shook the clouds in the sky. The explosive energy spread across all directions as if it was the ripple effect. With the exception of the martial artists of the Dragon Realm who was safe and sound, all the 7th level Holy Kings retreated and kept themselves out of the way. Thump. In the middle of the arena, both of them retreated. Xuanhuan retreated about 2 steps while Mo Wu retreated about 10 steps. The outcome of the match was obvious with just a glance. Xuanhuan smiled arrogantly and said leisurely, Junior Mo, it seems that you need to train harder. In the previous year, Mo Wu was defeated after 100 moves. However, at the very moment, the outcome was determined after one move. The faction master and the 10 elders exchanged looks. After which, they stared at Mo Wu and were filled with admiration. Not bad. There is finally a change in the ranking of the 4 great disciples. This match goes to Mo Wu. Mo Wu's rank will rise by 1 to the 3rd position while Xuanhuan's rank will fall by 1 to the 4th position. After the speech, their gazes shot towards Xuanhuan and they admonished him. Training is like sailing against the current. Instead of progressing, you have deteriorated. You have to train harder, or else the late bloomers will catch up with you. Hiccup. The whole arena was stunned. Although it was evident that Xuanhuan was victorious, why was the assessment as such? Xuanhuan's expression turned serious and he shot his gaze towards the 10th elder, his master. However, what he got in return was a gloomy and unpleasant expression. The 2nd elder's mouth opened slightly and she grinned. After experiencing the extreme changes in the abyss of Wutong, Mo Wu's cultivation base, which had remained stagnant for a long period of time, made a breakthrough. A few months ago, she had made a breakthrough from Dragon Realm Level 1 peak to Dragon Realm Level 2 lower tier. At the current match, she had suppressed her cultivation base and she did not care about winning or losing. However, her actions did not slip past the eyes of the faction master and a number of the elders. With a cultivation base at Dragon Realm Level 2 lower tier, a legacy-level cultivation technique at a frighteningly high level of Stage 3 lower class, combined with her usage of her fingers to replace her sword, Mo Wu had suppressed her abilities greatly. Hence, even though she lost, she did not get in the way of the judgment of the faction master and the elders. Mo Wu's abilities had surpassed Xuanhuan. 2nd match. 3rd match. The matches which carried on afterward were all dragon matches. The dragon matches were brilliant and they were hailed as the best matches. Su Yu was the same as most of the disciples. He observed every match attentively so that he could learn from it and also heighten his level of comprehension. Only Ji Hongshu closed his eyes and crossed his legs throughout the matches. He did not shoot any glances at the matches. It was as if all the matches did not catch his eye. 9th match. Su Yu vs Wei Kang. A thread of waves appeared in Shi Ruolan's voice which was calm throughout for the first time. How strong was Su Yu? Ji Hongshu, who felt uninterested and closed his eyes throughout the other matches, slowly opened his eyes. His swift and fierce eyes were looking forward to the match and he smiled. Let me see which aspect of the person that I am looking forward to seeing is strong in. Rustle. Gazes upon gazes came from the void and landed on Su Yu. A person that was considered very dangerous by Ji Hongshu and a person that Shen Zhuan was looking forward to fighting. How special was he? Bearing many gazes, Su Yu stepped onto the arena indifferently. Wei Kang looked at Shi Murong with a grateful expression inconspicuously. It was not a coincidence that he was able to face Su Yu. Rustle. As if he were a lump of smoke, Wei Kang's movement technique was quick and skillful and he floated onto the arena. He was also someone with extremely strong movement techniques. This is the end of the line for you. I, Wei Kang, will use my fists. Wei Kang secretly saw Mo Wu, who was paying close attention to the match, and his heart burnt with jealousy. He did not understand what did Su Yu have that caused Mo Wu to treat him with special respect. Be it abilities, resources or status, he was way above Su Yu by many times. However, before he was able to finish talking, Su Yu interrupted him coldly. I will give you 3 breaths time to finish your ranting. Wei Kang stopped talking and he was furious. Good. Since you want to get down the arena earlier, I will grant you your wish. 1 move is more than enough to defeat you. Rustle. Wei Kang's body transformed into light noise that was shaped like a ghost and he floated towards Su Yu. His speed was not slower than Su Yu's movement technique. He had honed Misty and Solitary Goose to Stage 2 top class and its speed is comparable to someone of Dragon Realm Level 2 upper tier. Ji Hongshu commented dully and his gaze focused more on Su Yu. Su Yu's eyes were clear and calm. He flipped open his wings and the Ice Phoenix's divine wings which blotted out the sky and the sun enveloped half of the arena. Whiz. With a sudden flash of a red light, Su Yu disappeared high up into the sky. Ji Hongshu's dull gaze contained an indifferent laughter. Among the faction, there are no ice-based martial artists. Even so, he managed to hone his legacy-level cultivation technique to stage 2 top class, and this is deserving of some praise. The equally matched movement technique collided in the sky. Wei Kang sneered. Do you think that by relying on your movement technique alone, you can fight with me shoulder to shoulder? Return back to where you belong. Rumble. A sound as if a thunderbolt was rolling around reverberated within his body. The spiritual energy of the dragon realm gushed out from his body as if a volcano had erupted abruptly. A spiritual energy which suppressed all holy kings headed towards Su Yu. Su Yu was as if he was a lone boat that had met with a stormy sea that could reach the sky and was about to topple. Mo Wu was a bit worried. Su Yu was alone. Would it be too difficult for him to handle his current situation? However, Su Yu, who was faced with the spiritual energy that was like a stormy sea, had pitch black and deep eyes that were calm like before. Fighting me with spiritual energy? Su Yu whispered indifferently. Rumble, rumble. A thunderbolt which traveled through the sky erupted from Su Yu's body abruptly. The thunderbolt was as if it was a sudden clap of thunder and it swam across the sky. After which, the raging spiritual energy splashed out with an explosion. The two lumps of spiritual energy which had erupted from their bodies collided with a loud crash. Bang! Rumble! A shocking exploding sound erupted between both of them abruptly. The frightening spiritual energy moved about like a dragon and it spread across all directions. Although it was incomparable to the match between Xuanhuan and Mo Wu, the spiritual energy could not be blocked by a holy king. Most of the 7th level holy kings retreated one after another and they were shocked. In particular, Long Fan, who was defeated, gasped and he was extremely shocked. Su Yu, his spiritual energy is actually so frightening. That spiritual energy which had achieved the level of Dragon Realm caused the bottom of Long Fan's feet to emit cold air. Ji Hongshu's dull eyes shone brilliantly. Interesting. An amount of spiritual energy that is twice of that of someone of the same level as him. Even the 1000-thread mantra within the faction does not have such a power. The faction master and the 10 elders revealed a thread of surprise for the first time. Su Yu's cultivation technique, where did it come from? The faction did not have such a superb legacy-level cultivation technique that could expand one's spiritual energy greatly. Moreover, Su Yu had honed his cultivation technique to a very high level, stage 2 top class. Su Yu had honed the 2 ice-based cultivation techniques Icy Divine Wings and Sigh of Ice to stage 2 top class. The person who was shocked the most was Wei Kang, who was sent flying by the attack. Giant waves of astonishment had started to form in his mind. In his eyes, he saw Su Yu as a weak person. However, he was equally matched with Su Yu in movement technique and spiritual energy. His proud words to defeat Su Yu with one move was shattered with a loud bang at the very moment. Wei Kang's face was half green half red and he was both furious and ashamed. You can be proud of yourself as your spiritual energy is equally matched with mine. However, everything has already come to an end. Wei Kang bit his teeth and he started to weave seals on both his hands. His fingers moved quickly and it looked like fragmentary shadows overlapping one another. A strange rhythm gathered in his palm and reverberated in the hearts of everyone. Every time the finger moved, everyone felt that their hearts tightened slightly. Mo Wu's expression turned serious. Is that his unique skill, Seal of Mountains and Seas, that the third elder personally passed on to him? Chen Zhuan's deep eyes were burning. Within the depository of Buddhist scriptures, the Seal of Mountains and Seas is an incredibly strong divine seal. As for Ji Hongshu, he was quite curious. It is said that the Seal of Mountains and Seas originated from some of the rumored legacy-level cultivation techniques. Hence, its power is one of the strongest among the depository of Buddhist scriptures. The second elder was a bit surprised. He had honed Seal of Mountains and Seas to stage 2 top class. In the past, the third elder relied on the rhymed formula of the seal to train, but no results were seen. Does Su Yu have any defensive moves to deal with it? Since I have used Seal of Mountains and Seas, who can win against me? Su Yu, cower upon the might of the Seal of Mountains and Seas. Wei Kang gave a light roar and condensed the Seal of Mountains and Seas to the best of his abilities. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 184. Charging into the top 10. Pitter-patter. A palm-sized scene of mountains and seas rising and falling was faintly visible between Wei Kang's palms. As he rotated his palms, the scene became more violent, displacing the seas and mountains, striking down at Su Yu. Su Yu felt the world turn darker, the scene of the mountains and seas crushing down from above his head. Crash. The stone board under Su Yu's feet was completely obliterated. The Dragon Realm disciples near the stage all had expressions of shock, retreating rapidly. The blood in their body was curling. The pressure of the seal caused their flow of blood to become unstable. The 7th level Holy King that did not retreat in time vomited blood as he flew back, completely shocked. What a scary seal. A 7th level Holy King wiped the blood off the corner of his lips, exclaiming in surprise as he withstood the pain in his stomach. Is Wei Kang really Dragon Realm level 1 lower tier? With the power of such a move, shouldn't he be closing in on Dragon Realm level 1 upper tier? The power of the Seal of Mountains and Seas was more powerful than anyone imagined. Su Yu's eyes remained calm, despite being in the middle of the impact. Stage 2 peak of a legacy level technique. Unfortunately, I've only cultivated mine up to Stage 2 upper tier. Su Yu muttered, lifting his head under the pressure of the seas and mountains. The bright red flame imprint between his brows jumped rapidly, like a spark of fire. Crack. It was as if the seal holding back an icy world had come undone. At that moment, a horrifying chilly energy spread forth from the seal between his brows. The chilly energy rushed to the skies, condensing into clouds. Even though it was a sunny afternoon, the vapors condensed, forming dense black clouds. White snow fell. Time turned back into a harsh winter. The sudden chill assaulted everyone, forcing them to circulate their spirit energy to prevent the chilly energy from entering their body. What a terrifying chilly energy. In terms of the technique's power, it is not weaker than the temperatures of Xuanhuan's 6 fingers of destruction. Look closely. This is just the beginning. Su Yu has yet to release the true chilly energy. A serious look finally entered Ji Hongshu's eyes. There is somebody who cultivated the closest technique to immortal class techniques in the depository, the glazed ice flame, to Stage 2 upper tier. Shen Zhuan's cold gaze also showed signs of surprise. What monstrous levels of perception. The difficulty in understanding this technique puts off even elders, but Su Yu could cultivate it to Stage 2 upper tier. Xuanhuan was shocked. He had personally felt the power of this technique. Had Su Yu cultivated that technique to such a degree? The threat and pressure had never felt larger to Xuanhuan. He clenched his fist. Answer ants. Don't think of trying to fly in the heavens with me. In his heart, Xuanhuan felt a deep sense of injustice. How would the power of Stage 2 upper tier technique hold up against the might of the Stage 3 peak of the Seal of Mountains and Seas? Atop the stage, Su Yu's eyes were shut tightly. Only the fire cloud seal between his brows flashed suddenly. Glazed ice flame. Crack. It was as if a volcano erupted. Fiery red flames spewed from Su Yu's fire cloud seal. The boundless flames covered the surroundings as if a ball of burning cloud. It was 30 feet long, hovering over a third of the arena. But there was no heat to the flames, only an extreme cold. Holy Kings retreat immediately. Dragon realms circulate your spirit energy to defend so as to ensure no casualties. The master of the Lixian faction was visibly shocked. The strange fiery red chilly energy caused even him to fear for his life. If the chilly energy was stronger by a few more notches, it would be enough to send his soul scattering. This was the incredible icy raging flame, condensed into a ball by Su Yu. The alarming chilly energy froze heaven and earth. The mountains and seas were frozen, becoming a picture of icy mountains and frozen seas. Crack. As the chilly energy became stronger, the seal of mountains and seas could no longer keep up, finally cracking. Spit. Wei Kang, who was using the technique, was implicated. His face turned red, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. In the chilly energy, the blood froze, turning into snowflakes as it scattered in the heavens. Wei Kang's face was etched with shock and fear. His technique was clearly a tier higher than his opponent's. But the results of the collision was a definite defeat. The fiery red cloud of ice flames was immensely horrifying. A victor had been decided for this battle. No one could believe such an unexpected result. A mere 6th level peak Holy King had decisively defeated a Dragon Realm level 1 peak, even though Wei Kang had deliberately held back, but to be able to best him caused many to be in shock. Ji Hongshu shook his head gently, his eyes laced with disappointment. Not bad, but unfortunately, he had not displayed what I wished to see. Xuanhuan was also disappointed. If his abilities are but so, he is not worthy of fighting me. HMPH. His abilities are average. Xuanhuan was shocked by the power of the glazed ice flame, but seeing Su Yu's abilities, he was at ease. Wei Kang had held back, only using 40% of his abilities. Su Yu had won with much difficulty, his abilities average. If Wei Kang had used his full abilities, Su Yu would never be able to match him. Atop the arena, Wei Kang's eyes were filled with humiliation. He had lost. He could bear with it had he lost to anyone else. But he did not allow himself to lose to Su Yu. He was but an ant needing to be protected by a woman in the abyss of Wutong, but now he could stand toe-to-toe with him at 40%. Don't be arrogant. It's not over. Wei Kang clenched his teeth, furiously grunting. I had wanted to hold back, but now I guess I need not reserve my strength when it comes to dealing with such an arrogant fellow. His teacher, the third elder, lightly creased his brows, wishing to stop him. But after thinking about it, he ultimately gave up that thought. Wei Kang would inevitably develop a knot in his heart if he lost this fight. It was better to let him fight with his full abilities. In front of his full powers, the outcome of the match was clear as day. Hearing this, Su Yu thought for a moment, gently nodding his head. All right. Since you are coming with me at full power, I can use this chance to test where my abilities stand when I use everything in my arsenal. These words caused a stir in the crowd. What? That lad had also held something back. What kind of bonds did his body have? Many of the disciples were shocked. Su Yu had shown such a powerful ability, but was under the bonds on his body. Mo Wu's eyes were serious. Her teacher had said that Su Yu had deliberately suppressed his abilities, but she could not see how he was doing that. A renewed excitement replaced the disappointment in Ji Hongshu's eyes. Was that bind the thing I was cautious about? Xuanhuan observed Su Yu, finally locking his gaze on his waist where a stone the shape of a small hill that was tied to him by a divine ice thread. He squinted. That small rock. Could that be somewhat heavy? Xuanhuan also shot his gaze there, his expression serious. It would seem like that is not ordinary. But given its size, even if it were heavy, it wouldn't make too much of a difference. Wei Kang laughed. You do not hold back your words. Are you telling me that there are heavy sandbags around your limbs? Such methods of training with weights were not rare. There were many who cultivated with this technique in the faction, but the effects were minuscule. Su Yu did not regard that, unraveling the divine ice thread and throwing the small rock on the ground. Crash. It was as if a landmine exploded. It was clearly a small rock, but it was as if a mountain had crashed into the arena. The impact caused the arena to shake. Cracks the size of legs spread everywhere. Everywhere they looked was on the verge of collapse. The crowd was silent. He was carrying a mountain during battle. Long Fan, who had once fought Su Yu, gasped. How is that possible? Xuanhuan could not believe it. Fighting with such a heavy mountain and achieving such a terrifying battle ability. Once this was released, then. Ji Hongshu shuddered, then smiled. Interesting. How very interesting. Carrying a small mountain while cultivating. This is simply unheard of. The second elder, who had long seen the bind Su Yu put on himself, was also shocked. The thing he used to suppress himself was this powerful. But what made her, the master of the faction, and the rest of elders even more shocked was what kind of power was needed to shrink a mountain to the size of a thumb-sized stone. To their knowledge, there was no one in the world who could do that. In the dust and debris that had been sent flying, Suyu felt incredibly relaxed, letting out a groan of relaxation. He had been carrying this mountain for about 2 months now. Now that he freed himself from it, he felt that his body was light as feathers, unprecedentedly relaxed. The blood and veins that had been suppressed by the mountain had suddenly been released. Rumble. The blood in his body was like a wild horse that had been caged for a long time, charging into his veins. The power that had been suppressed in his veins were all released, flowing to all parts of his body through his veins. The flesh that had been freed absorbed that energy hungrily. Suyu's 6th level peak Holy King cultivation level rose rapidly. Buzz buzz buzz. In just 3 breaths, Suyu's cultivation level had leaped past the hardest hurdle many have in their lives, achieving 7th level lower tier Holy King. At this moment, the explosion of power had stopped. But Suyu could feel that his flesh was still in a state of hunger. If he fed him enough energy, he could rise another tier in his cultivation level. He achieved a breakthrough. Under the constant burden, his flesh had been incredibly suppressed. Now that he released it from the strain, he could achieve a breakthrough. Feeling the power of a 7th level Holy King, Suyu was filled with gratitude. Without Yunyazi, how difficult would it be for him to reach this stage? Suyu kept his emotions, regaining his calm expression, shooting a look onto Wei Kang. Wei Kang's expression was rigid, swallowing. Had Suyu been fighting with him just now with such a heavy item? Thinking about this, Wei Kang's heart trembled. Suyu was not human in his eyes. But Wei Kang was already primed for the attack, he could not turn back now. Clenching his teeth, Wei Kang frowned. All right, I'll see just how strong you are. He had not finished his words before a blur flashed past his eyes. It was Suyu, who had teleported over. His speed had exceeded Wei Kang's understanding. Ah, you. Wei Kang let out a scream of fear. But the sharp scream stopped abruptly. A palm had assaulted his abdominal area. He could not reach and was sent flying across the arena. Ah. With a pathetic howl, Wei Kang crashed onto the floor, his face red. His back had been torn by the impact of the crash. Suyu, after his release, had defeated Wei Kang at full power with one move. After releasing his restraints, his speed and power had all received drastic improvements. In terms of movement techniques, he is no longer weaker than a Dragon Realm level 1 peak. Chiruolan's eyelids were twitching, fear spreading in her eyes, but her eyes hid some signs of surprise. Round 9. Suyu wins. The Master and the 10 Elders exchanged opinions, deciding on his placement. Rank 10th. The Master of the Liaxian faction gave his personal opinion. The rest of the Elders, even the 10th Elder who was extremely biased against Suyu, had to admit that that was a reasonable judgment. But this placement caused an uproar within the disciple. For Suyu's placement was even higher than some of the Dragon Realm upper-tier disciples. Wei Kang was merely a bottom-ranking Dragon Realm disciple. How did Suyu warrant a place in the top 10 just by defeating him? Xuanhuan was incredibly anxious. Suyu had fought his way into the top 10 of the faction, rapidly catching up with him. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 185. The Summary of the Continent. Chen Zhuan's eyes were filled with trouble and he revealed a threat of anticipation. The assessment is reasonable. Suyu's abilities are way above Wei Kang and they are very near to a Dragon Realm level 1 upper tier. In addition, he still has hidden abilities that he has yet to show us. Hence, it is not too much for the faction master and the elders to conclude that Suyu is ranked 10th. Ji Hongshu frowned slightly. He shook his head and sighed. Isn't number 10 a bit unfair to him? My instinct tells me that Suyu is more dangerous than you imagine. He should be in the top 5 and hence be standing side by side with me. Xuanhuan gasped. Number 5, him. Ji Hongshu swept his eyes across him indifferently and said normally. Putting aside the suppressing of the cultivation base, you could not even withstand a single blow of his. This point, it seems that you have already experienced it, right? Previously, when Xuanhuan suppressed his cultivation base, he was assaulted by Su Yu to the point that he was half dead. Even Ji Hongshu, who shut himself off from the outside world, had also caught a wind of that incident. Xuanhuan's face turned red. That defeat was a disgrace that he could never hope to clean off. Su Yu, I will never acknowledge that you have the right to be my equal. Xuanhuan glared at Su Yu firmly and he was burning with anger. No disgrace was as deep as it was in his bone marrow except when an ant caught up to him. Last match. Ji Hongshu vs Xuanhuan. The both of them were the strongest disciples in the faction. But they did not fight one another. The match between you and me shall happen during the alliance meet. Ji Hongshu said with his eyes filled with anticipation. Xuanhuan's eyes were burning with excitement. Ha ha, that is for the best. The alliance meet is the stage for both of us. Lixian faction is too small. In the end, Ji Hongshu's gaze swept past the people and landed on Su Yu. He revealed his intentions to fight Su Yu. You owe me a match. The next time, you must be sure to exhibit what I am looking forward to. Su Yu cupped his fists in awe. Of course. The Xianyan contest had come to an end. As an unprecedented black horse, Su Yu fought into the top 10 of the faction in one shot and became the most dazzling new star. The 20 of you have half a day's time to prepare before we head to the place where the ancient Xianyan temple descends. The faction master declared indifferently. Before he left, he looked at Su Yu profoundly. Among the 10 elders, a number of them looked at Su Yu profoundly. At the very moment, that junior who once caused havoc because of a marriage leaped and grew into one of the 10 great martial artists of the faction who possessed frightening talents. There were many people who felt remorseful. If they had known that this would happen, they would have taken the risk of offending the second elder to take Su Yu as their disciple. If that were the case, how glorified would they feel? Moreover, Su Yu possessed many surprising ice-based cultivation techniques. If they had taken Su Yu as their disciple, they would acquire his cultivation techniques as well. Little kid, the old bastards in your faction seem to harbor ill intentions. Luckily, you have kept that remnant of the immortal level cultivation technique hidden and not exhibit it. If not, they might not even wait and question you forcefully regarding the origins of that immortal level cultivation technique straight away. Yun Yazu's voice, which took pleasure over Su Yu's misfortune, echoed in Su Yu's chest. He was experienced and vicious and was able to notice unusual expressions on a number of the elders. Su Yu also noticed it and he nodded his head lightly. Yes. I cannot stay in Lixian faction any longer. Within Su Yu's heart, he was rejoicing slightly. He had stayed at the incredible ice lake for 2 months. Under the effects of a time flow that was 200 times faster, 2 months was equivalent to 300 over years. Su Yu had finally comprehended that remnant of immortal level cultivation technique and he possessed a small portion of the powers of the immortal level cultivation technique. That was what Ji Hongshu was talking about. Fortunately, he had kept that power hidden. If he had exhibited it, it would bring trouble. The second elder might be able to protect him for a short period of time, but it would be difficult for her to protect him for life. He could not stay in Lixian faction any longer. After killing Hanji and Shiruolan, he had to think of ideas to break away from Lixian faction. Before that, he had to enter the ancient Xianyan temple to look for the Phoenix blood elixir and save Xiana. After deciding what he had to do, Su Yu kept his small mountain and rested for a short while. Looking at the situation, he had half a day's free time. Su Yu's eyes flashed and he went to the depository of Buddhist scriptures. He had a chance to enter the depository of Buddhist scriptures. After his identity had been verified, he entered the depository of Buddhist scriptures, which was under tight security, successfully. His objective was to look through the summary of the Zhenlong continent that Mo Wu mentioned. When he entered the depository of Buddhist scriptures again, the great pressure which once oppressed him to the point that he vomited blood was as light as the feather of a swan at the very moment. As he strolled into the depository of Buddhist scriptures, the legacy-level cultivation techniques that he was once eyeing it could no longer catch his eye at the very moment. Only the rumored manual of immortal-level cultivation technique within the depository of Buddhist scriptures could arouse his interest. That cultivation technique could only be honed by the faction master, and the elders could not even touch it, let alone Su Yu. Atop a frail bookshelf, Su Yu found a booklet which has turned yellow with some parts missing. That book was summary of the Zhenlong continent. When Su Yu flipped open the booklet was dilapidated and only one manual remained, the summary of the north of the continent. In no time, Su Yu was immersed in the booklet's vast explanation. The Zhenlong continent was split into north, south, east, west, 4 continents. The location that Lixian faction was at was the North Continent. The reclining dragon's snowfield with snow floating in the air eternally was the symbol of the North Continent. The reclining dragon's snowfield was a mountain range which passed through the whole North Continent, and it extended endlessly. The mountain range meandered complicatedly, and it divided the whole North Continent into 3 territories. The territory at the northern part experienced winter throughout the year. The snow and ice do not melt through the ages, and it was known as the Winter Territory. In the Winter Territory, there was an extremely powerful force known as the Snow Listening Tower, and it held the position of an overlord. Without it, no other forces could exist. The Middle Territory was cold and hot respectively due to the changes of the 4 seasons. It was known as the Chauge Territory, and it was controlled by the extremely powerful cabinet of the 9 Phoenixes. It was difficult for outside forces to enter their fractions. The territory at the southern part was known as the 100 Territories. The 100 Territories was more barbarous and remote than its neighbor, the ocean. Hence, it was extremely short on training resources. The 100 Territories was once a barren piece of land. After many years, the small and medium forces that found it hard to live in the Winter Territory, as well as the Chauge Territory, gradually gathered at that barren piece of land, and the 100 Territories was formed as a result. At the 100 Territories, its factions' powers were heterogeneous, and there were at least 100 of them. As the 100 Territories' power was weak, forces of Snow Listening Tower and the cabinet of the 9 Phoenixes invaded it. Hence, the 100 Territories formed an alliance spontaneously, and they were collectively known as the 100 Territories Alliance by the outside world. The alliance was formed to repel surprise attacks by the outside world. The master of the 100 Territories Alliance was an extremely powerful force who lost to Snow Listening Tower in their competition many years ago. Although he had lost part of his forces, he still became a big force. He retreated to and stayed in the 100 Territories, becoming a figure that many other forces looked up to. Under the command of the master, the 100 Territories Alliance was able to live peacefully. In order to develop the abilities in the big and strong 100 Territories Alliance, its master founded the Shenshin Manor. Every 5 years, a Heaven Ruler's disciple of the new generation from every force would be selected from the 100 territories that were under the master's control to enter the Shenshin Manor. The resources from the barren 100 territories would be gathered to nurture those disciples so that a batch of geniuses would be created, strengthening the abilities of the alliance as a whole. Hence, the alliance meet was held once every 5 years. The hundreds of forces that were under the governance of the alliance would choose an outstanding disciple in their respective forces to participate in the meet, secure a placing to enter the Shenshin Manor and further their training. It was said that without fail, anyone who went to Xuanhuan Manor to further their training would achieve Dragon Realm level 7 minimally. Heaven rulers who transcended the Dragon Realm to reach the levels of Lixian faction master and elders could be found everywhere. Moreover, after some Heaven ruler kings were nurtured, they became legendary figures which shocked the 100 territories. Other than that, in history, a mythological genius which caused an uproar in the North Continent had appeared before. It could be said that by entering Xuanhuan Manor, there would be a huge turn in a person's life. Staying in a small dwelling forever or marching into the 100 Alliance to stand at a greater stage. The Xuanhuan Manor was the only chance for disciples of the 100 Territories Alliance. The objective of Ji Hongshu, Shen Zhouan, Cao Xuan and Mo Wu was the Xuanhuan Manor. There were only 100 slots in every year of the Alliance meet. As for the participants who managed to enter the alliance meet, all of them were exceptional heaven rulers who stood at the peak. In the history of Lixian faction, there was only one person who managed to get into the top 100. That person was the second elder. Her talents were so exceptional that it defied the natural order, and at the age of 18, she fought into the top 100. After training for 2 years, she made a breakthrough to Dragon Realm level 7. When she returned, she took on the role of the second elder. Her life was full of romance. Having understood all of that, Su Yu's heart became restless for a long time. The North Continent alone was already so broad. In his eyes, Lixian faction was a place that he found hard to go beyond. Among the 100 territories, Lixian faction was one of the weak forces that were at the bottom. Moreover, in the North Continent, the 100 territories was considered to be the weakest force. Outside the North Continent, there were still 3 continents that were not known to anyone. A great impact caused Su Yu to feel extremely shocked. The 2 words Shenshin Manor had also caused Su Yu to be filled with anticipation. The only opportunity to enter the giant stage in the 100 territories was to leave the desolate and remote Lixian faction. As such, it was no wonder that the Heaven Ruler's disciples in the faction were looking forward to alliance meet. After settling the matters regarding Li Guang and Xiana, Su Yu also wanted to enter the alliance meet and compete against the Heaven Rulers in the 100 territories. Having flipped to the last page, the introduction of the Northern Continent was complete and the booklet with missing parts was finished as well. There was still half a page left and it introduced the rankings of the forces in Zhenlong Continent. As the booklet was missing some of its parts, only the first 10 rankings remained. The force ranked number 1 was actually the Empire of Darkness. Su Yu's pupils shrank and he was shocked. He had imagined that the Empire of Darkness power was huge and that it was stronger than Lixian faction. He did not expect it to be ranked number 1 in the whole of Zhenlong Continent. Looking at Snow Listening Tower and the Cabinet of the 9 Phoenixes, which were the strongest in the North Continent again, Snow Listening Tower was ranked number 10. As for the 100 Territories Alliance, it might not even be in the top 20. Moreover, among the alliance, the extremely weak Lixian faction. Compared to the Empire of Darkness, Lixian faction might not even be considered an ant. Behind the rankings, there was a brief introduction. The Empire of Darkness is a legacy from the ancient times and it is extremely mysterious. It had dominated Zhenlong continents many times in the past. The strongest person, the King of Darkness, has 7 generals under his control and they are collectively known as the 7 Lords of Darkness. When the Empire of Darkness was at its pinnacle, the King of Darkness could flood the continent with the blood of all the unmatched martial artists. Every Lord of the 7 Lords of Darkness had the ability to suppress the force, which was ranked number 2. Su Yu was shocked. The Empire of Darkness was actually so frightening. The Empire of Darkness has an outpost at every territory of the 4 continents. It inveigled and assassinated many Heaven Rulers, disciples of the big and small forces. It had also roped in all the geniuses in the continent to strengthen itself. When Su Yu saw the last sentence, he suddenly recalled that when carrying out his duties of killing the Sea Wolves pirates, he came across a silver-shirted guard from the Empire of Darkness. His task looked like it was to plunder outstanding disciples from Lixian faction. When he was rejected by Su Yu, he wanted to get rid of Su Yu so that he could eradicate the source of trouble. As Su Yu recalled a number of instances of killing people from the Empire of Darkness, he could not help but click his tongue in fear. Although he had no intentions of doing so, he had provoked an extremely frightening force. Have you finished reading it? At that moment, he could hear a cold hum abruptly. Su Yu returned to his senses from his astonishment. As he was immersed in the introduction of the continent, he did not realize that someone had arrived beside him. When he turned his head and looked over, an ugly and malevolent demon-looking face was reflected in his eyes. Su Yu smiled. Second Elder. When Su Yu shot his gaze towards the Second Elder, he realized that the Second Elder was also looking up information. Even though it was a glance, he managed some of the words clearly. The information that the Second Elder was looking up was actually the Phoenix of Death. Second Elder, is it because there are some changes to Xiana's condition? Su Yu was anxious. If the Phoenix of Death descends early, all his hard work would go to waste. The Second Elder shook her head indifferently. No. Qin Xiana's Phoenix of Death is quite special. Hence, I am looking up some information. During the time when the Second Elder shut herself off with Xiana from the outside world for 2 months, she discovered that the characteristics of Qin Xiana's Phoenix of Death were a bit strange. Hence, she left her secluded area earlier to look for information. Special. Su Yu's heart clicked. Could it be that there was something worse than the Phoenix of Death? End of the chapter. The Divine Nine Dragon will be read in 5 chapters for every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.